Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the Little Shining Wolf workshop, hosted by Shawish Market and funded by the Government of Canada. We're so thrilled to have you with us today. Before we go into the workshop, we're gonna I'll give you introduction of who I am. My name is Amanda Bernard, and I'm a proud member of the Madawaska Maliseet First Nation. I'm also the owner of Shawish Market. My original last name was supposed to be Shawish, but when settlers came to Canada and made my ancestors change their last name, my ancestors decided on the last name Bernard because that was the name of their favorite priest. So to honor my ancestors, I named the marketplace Shawish. And Shawish is an indigenized custom-built website similar to Etsy that empowers indigenous entrepreneurs as we don't charge any vendor fees. This initiative is part of our mission to remove economic barriers and foster sustainable growth within indigenous communities. Shawish is unique not only in its fee structure, but also its vendor verification process. We ensure that all products sold are authentic and directly benefiting Indigenous communities. We also incorporate Indigenous ways of knowing, such as our trade platform and listening to our elders. We have over 160 vendors, over 700 authentic items, and over 13,000 Instagram followers. Our mission statement is to help support Indigenous businesses across Turtle Island. And here are some of the items that you can find on our website as well. So take a look, as there are a lot of different diverse items that you can purchase for yourself or for loved ones. And make sure to follow our Instagram, although I feel many of you are already doing so, but you can at shawish.market.com. And we're here today to honor National Truth and Reconciliation Day. And that is, it's on September 30th, and it allows Canadians to come together to learn and celebrate Indigenous culture and learn about the legacy of residential schools. And we wear orange on September 30th to honor our traditions, and because of the Phyllis Webster story as well. And I will now pass it over to Mercedes to introduce herself.
I'm trying to see if I can switch my camera to my laptop quickly. Hold on, let's see. Hi everyone, my name is Mercedes. I go by Little Shiny Wolf as well. My name in Niska is Gumilkam Gibu, which does translate to closely Little Shiny Wolf. It's like the shiny part is like something that sparkles like a star, so Little Shiny Wolf. I am Niska and African American mix. My mom is from Gitgingolach, BC, which is located pretty close to Alaska. It's about a 20-minute speedboat ride. You might hear some slight barking or other sounds in the background. Those are just my pups. They're in the room with me, entertaining themselves. I have been beading for about 7, almost 8 years now. I learned here in Toronto. I started actually with the storybook school through Manitoba Mucklucks at the Batty's Shoe Museum, and I learned through like Stephanie Pangowish. And then after that, I took a little hiatus from beading for maybe about a year, and then I picked it back up and again in about 2018 and a lot more in 2019. I had always thought like I wasn't an artistic or creative person. And then I had someone say to me one time when I'd made that comment that everyone's an artistic person, you just have to find your medium. And, eventually I realized like I actually really enjoy beading and being able to try new things out, play with different beads and kind of just see how things look. And it's taken a lot of practice. When I first started, it would take me hours and hours to do like a really small piece. And through several years of like practicing this craft, I've learned to get a little bit more nimbler with my fingers. Like you build up that dexterity. Um, but I'm very thankful to be here and be able to do this workshop with you all. So thank you to Amanda for inviting me, and as well to the sponsors for being able to do this workshop together. So yeah, that's the gist of me.
Awesome. So I'll stop sharing and I'll make you host, Mercedes.
Okay.
As well, we're going to ask everybody if you could please introduce yourself in the chat. And if you have any questions, make sure to include them in the chat as well.
Yeah, so you won't be able to unmute yourselves. Everything will just be in the chat. I will be We'll both be moderating the chat as it's going on to see if there's any questions coming up. But for the most part, we'll be focusing on beading and on the mat. Everyone should have received their kit. I mailed them out about 2-ish weeks ago. And inside your kit, you're gonna see some of the following items. Let me just switch my camera over here. Here we go. So you will have received a little mat, a little beading mat. You will have received 3 colors of delicate beads that look similar to this. They're size 11s. You will have received a tray. You will have gotten a chain, a jump ring that looks like this, as well as a wire guard. So they look kind of like this here. You should have received 2 needles. So I have mine here. You only really need 1, but I included 2 because I remember when I was first learning, I didn't realize how delicate the needles could be, and I would sometimes snap them in half by accident. So you have a backup. So you only really need the 1. Just be careful with them. They are long, so they do bend easily and they could break. And then you will have received some fire line thread as well. You could use regular thread. I just found that this is easier to bead with and it makes the pieces more stiff if you're doing kind of like the diamond shaped pendant that we're going to be doing. If you're doing fringe, then you would want to do something that would have a more flexibility like a nylon thread like this, because the fringe will lay nicer. But if you're using fire line for something like a fringe, your fringe are going to look real wet. They're just gonna be extra like crooked and very stiff, so they won't have that like nice little dangle to them. So each person will have received about 1.5 wingspans of fire line. So a wingspan is if you hold your hands out in your arms to your like straight out like a bird. It's fingertip to fingertip length for my wingspan. So you received 1.5 wingspans about my length here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get started with the fire line first. So just a reminder, this workshop is being recorded just so that way if you miss an instruction or you want to review something later on, you can. I'm going to slow down how I go typically in my speed to try to allow for beginners to be able to see the steps more clearly. I might repeat steps too, just to show you how to do it a couple times for someone who's just started. If you are experienced or you know how to bead, you can definitely just go along at your own pace. I emailed out the templates to everybody yesterday, so you should have received a PDF to your email. So you're going to take your needle, whatever needle you would like, and you're going to thread it. So I have mine threaded, and then you're going to take out some of your beads. You can reverse the colors however you would like it to go. The way I'm going to have it is this color is going to be on my outside. I'm going to do this color on my inside or my middle. And this color is going to be at the top. So once you have your colors out, we're going to start off with your first color that you want to be on the outside of your diamond. So the diamond's going to look like this. And those are just the puppies. Those are just the pups. So we're going to start off with the diamond. And I'm going to be doing this side here first, but as we go, we're going to be going along here. So when you've gotten your template, you're going to see that there's 3 colors and we're going to be working at the middle part, going all the way across, and we're going to build up. Once we get to the top part, we'll finish it off and we're going to go and start that bottom half piece. This is called a brick stitch, and the size of it, if you look at the template, it's 18 beads across, and then it goes like about a dozen or so rows on each side up. When it's done in size, I have an example, not the one we're like the exact pattern we're working on, but I can show you what it would look like. Do I have it? I don't have one. I thought I did. I lied. Okay. Well, you will see as we go. So now that I hope everyone has their beads out and they have their needle thread, we're going to get started here. You're going to pick up your first bead color. And let me just check the chat quickly before we get started here. Just make sure there's no questions yet. So welcome everyone. Okay, perfect. You're still setting up. Okay, I'll give you a moment. So while we wait another minute or two for people to set up, if you haven't, you can go get some snacks. This will probably take a couple hours. If you do not finish in those couple hours, again, it will be recorded so you can review the video later on when it's shared with you. I have like my coffee, my water, I have chips, and I have some gummies. So I'm like fully prepared to be here to get this done together. All right. Let's see. Okay. I hope everyone's almost ready to go. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to take this color here first. It is kind of like a slightly transparent glassy color called marigold. You're going to pick up one bead. Let's see if I can bring my camera just a smidge closer without distorting too much here. Sorry. Okay. So you're going to pick up one bead and you're going to take that bead and bring it to the middle of where your thread is. So when you thread your needle, you're only threading it on. We're not going to double it and make a knot anywhere. You're just threading it so that the needle is actually on the thread. Don't make any knots. So once it's threaded, you're going to take that one bead we picked up and you're going to bring it right into the middle of all the thread. So you're going to probably have to reach your arm out to do this. And then once you have the bead sitting in the middle of the thread, the direction where the needle is coming out of, so my needle's coming this way, I want to go behind and put my needle through the bead where it's almost making a circle with that thread. And then what this is it's a stopper bead. It's going to prevent the piece from falling apart. And it should look like so. So I have my stopper bead here right in the middle. So again, you're going to thread your needle. Don't make any knots. You're going to pick up one bead. I'm picking up this one kind of like transparent matte glossy color, or not glossy, a glass color called marigold. And you bring your bead right to the middle of the thread. And then the opposite side of where the needle comes out, so my needle is attached to the side of the thread, I put the needle through this bottom part here, this back part here on the opposite side. You're going to bring it together and pull it all the way through. And it's again called a stopper bead. So it's just going to have it stay in place. So next, what we're going to do with our needle is you're going to pick up two more of that color again, whatever color you chose to be on the outside. So I have those two. So where the needle's coming out of, that side of the thread, you're going to want to stick your needle going through that stopper bead. So again, if your needle is coming this way, you want the needle to go through the same direction up it where the needle and the thread are coming out of, not through the other way. We're not making a circle this time. We're just pushing this one right through. And what this is going to do is it's going to make almost like a pyramid. So you might have to play around with it a little bit to get to sit properly. When it does, it should look something like this. So they're going to be stacked. So we have three beads stacked together now. I could show you that one more time just for anyone who is a beginner. So again, you have your stopper bead. You'll pick up two beads. So these are my two new beads. And this is the side that my needle's coming out of. I'm sticking my needle going right through it. Pulling it nice and a little snug. And then you might have to use your nails to play around with it a little bit. And it should make this kind of like diamond. or I mean triangle. So I have like this little triangle here, this little pyramid. There's 3 beads stacked together now. So now what we're going to be doing is you're going to pick up another one of these beads that you had started with. So again, I chose marigold, so I'm going to pick up one. And you see where the thread's coming up from the top. With my new one bead, I'm going to go down through this one bead sticking out on the bottom part of that pyramid. I'm going to pull it through. And now you're going to have 4 beads on there, like so. So now we are going to pick up another bead. If you miss any steps, sorry, I just got the stopper on. Can you show I'll show it one more time quickly. But if you miss any steps, you can always watch the recorded version of this later on, just so that we can get going, or else I remember when I first started this, would like something like this would probably have taken me 5-6 hours to do. And unfortunately, we only have 2 hours. So I have to keep going with the steps. But here is that first step again after that stopper bead. So we have your one stopper bead on right there. You're going to pick up 2 beads of the same color. And where that thread is coming out of, where that needle is, where the thread comes out, where the needle's attached, you're going to go right up through it. And you're going to pull your thread through. And it's going to create this like triangle pyramid shape. You might have to use your nails to play around with it to get the beads to sit properly. But it's going to look something like this, where it's the 3 beads stacked together. And then what you're going to do next is you are going to pick up, again, whatever color you chose for this outside part. I chose marigold. You're going to, where you see the top pyramid part where there's just 1 bead and there are 2 beads on the bottom, you want to go through the 2 beads on the bottom. You want to go through that 1 bead sticking out, going down, and then you should have 2 beads on top of each other. So 2 beads and 2 beads. You don't have to do it with a stopper if you don't want to. If you are an experienced beader and you know how to do this kind of a style already, you can go ahead and do it how you like. I sent the templates over just to show you how big and where the colors kind of like fall. So you could do whatever side you would like, or whatever style you would like to do beading. But for a beginner, I'm just going to walk you through how to do it the way I would do it. So now we have 4 beads. So you're going to pick up another of the same color. So again, I'm using marigold. And what we're doing is we're almost doing like a weave for this whole first row. So we're going to be going up through that bead sticking out. Then when it comes out, I'm going to add another bead on, and then I'm going down. I'll be going up and down all the way through. So here, this bead sticking out, I'm going to be putting my needle through it with my new bead attached. Now I have 5. So now you can see this 1 bead here that's sticking out. We're going to pick up another bead for whatever you chose on your outside part. And you're going to go down through that 1 bead sticking out and pull it all the way through. So now we have 6 beads on there. All right, so now we're going to pick up 1 more of that color that we started with. And again, where this bead is sticking out right here, I'm going to go up through it with my new bead. And now we have 7 beads on there. So you can see there's 4 on the bottom, 3 on top. So now we're going to be switching to the color we want to be in the middle of the pendant. I'm going to be choosing this burnt orange here, which you all will have received as well. It's just a silver lined burnt orange color. And we're going to continue the same thing going all the way to the end until this bigger part here where there's 4 beads. There should be 18 beads going all the way across, and then we know we're done. And then we're going to start doing what's called a brick stitch following. So you're going to pick up the new color that you want in the middle where that bead is sticking out. You want to make sure you're putting your needle down through it. And it'll look like this. So now we have that new bead new bead on there. And it's sticking out a little bit. So you're gonna pick up another bead, same color. And we are going to go up through that new bead. And as you're doing this, you might notice that it looks a little loose in some areas for you. If you just hold on to the piece and you just kind of like play around with the thread a little bit to tighten it a little, it'll pull the piece together. So it looks like this now. So you can see this one bead here is sticking out on the bottom. So I'm going to pick up another one of the same color. I'm going down through that piece sticking out. So it's the same step going all the way through across. You're going to be picking up, going up, and then you'll pick up, going down, pick up, go up, pick up, go down. So there should be 4 of this color going across this way for the top and bottom row. And then when we have 4, that's when we switch to the next color. So right now there is 2 on top and 1 on the bottom of this new color. So I just need to add on 5 more beads. So there's 4 on top and 4 on the bottom. There you go there. So the 4. I picked up another bead. And again, I'm going through there where the bead's sticking out. Looking like that. So then you're gonna do that step 3 more times until we have 4 of that new color on top and 4 of that new color on the bottom. And so when you get to that part there, it should look something like this. So you'll have on this bottom row, there's 8 beads in total. There's 4 of that marigold that I chose, 4 of the burnt pumpkin. On top, there's going to be 7. 3 of the marigold, 4 of the burnt pumpkin. So when we get to this part here, we're going to switch and we're going to go to that color that's going to be towards the top of the diamond pendant, which I've chosen to be this color here. This is like a squash color. So what this row needs here on the bottom is 18 beads going across. And so there's 8 here and it needs to mirror. So on the other side, there's going to be 8 as well. So 8 plus 8 is 16, 16 subtracted from 18 is 2. So we know we need 2 of the squash here on the bottom, 3 on the top, and then we're going to mirror the pattern you already have here for your colors on this side here. And then once we get to the end and we have the 18 beads at the bottom, we're going to start doing our brick stitch going up through the top. So you're going to pick up that 3rd color where the bead is sticking out. You're going to go down through it. Pick it up again. Now you're going to go up through the new bead. And don't forget, you can always give it them like little tugs as you're going, just to make sure everything's sitting nice together. It's not, doesn't need to be too tight, but you do want them to be close together where there's not too much of a gap in between them. So then we're going to pick up another of that 3rd color, going down through that bead sticking out. Pick up another bead, and you're going to go up through the beads sticking out. We'll keep dropping them. There we go. And then one more. So you should have 5 in total of that new color we just added on your piece, 2 on the bottom, 3 on top. So it should look something like this so far. And then we're going to switch back to that 2nd color you picked. So for me, again, it was that burnt orange. So I'll have 8 in total going this way. So 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. And then we'll finish off with that first color you chose. That'll be on the outside. So for me, it was that marigold color. So there's going to be 7. Yeah, because I have a little knot. I'm going to restart. I'm trying to rush. Aurelia's moving to her own drum, but we love. Okay, yeah, no, take your time. Again, it will be recorded too. So if you end up falling behind, you just kind of like want to watch the steps, just see, you can definitely stick around and watch. Um, Once we start getting to the brick stitch part, I'll slow down quite a bit just because that part's, once you pick it up, it's pretty easy. But I know like the first part's going to be a little trickier for some people if you've never done the brick before. So here we are, we're going to go back to that second color. So you're just going to be going up with it, down, up, down, and following all the way through to the end until we have at the very bottom row 18 pieces. So I got that on. So again, wherever the bead's sticking out, that's the bead you want to be going through. So that one on the end. And then I'm going to go down to that new one. So pick up another bead. So again, where the bead's sticking out, you want to make sure you're putting your needle right through it, pulling it up and through, making sure it sits on there. So here I have 5 now, so I know I need 8, so I have to do it 3 more times with this color. So I picked up the new bead. I'm going down, pulling it through, picking up another bead. I'm going up now, pulling it through. And now I have 7, so I need 1 more. So I'm going to pick up 1 more, going down, pulling it through. Here we go. So this is what we're at so far. So again, we have the first color here. I have my second color here. This is the middle color. Now I'm mirroring it, and I just finished doing that second color again, and now I'm going to finish with that first color. So in total, I need 7 beads of that first color, and then there'll be 18 across on the bottom. So wherever that bead's sticking out of, you want to just make sure you're putting your needle through it. So going down with it. And then if you notice, like as you're doing it, like little gaps like this appear. If you can see that, just hold onto the piece, give it a nice little snug pull. Not too tight, you don't want to rip it or break any beads, but just enough to kind of get them in place. So if you have to play with it a little bit, that's okay. You'll see it sit nicely, and then you'll know you can continue on. So I have 2 of that first color on. I need to do 5 more, and then I am done this first row. So wherever the bead is sticking out of, you want to put your needle through with that new bead on it, and then pick up another bead. So usually when I'm doing this, I will like binge watch a TV show. Either something that's been on my list or something that doesn't require me to have to spend too much time focusing on, because if I get invested into a show, then I'll be either beating really slowly or I won't be beating at all. So usually I choose like a lot of like a reality or quote unquote trash TV. So I just started this show called Mormon Moms or Mormons of TikTok. I can't remember what it's called. It's on like on Disney. But other shows like that I've watched in the past would have been like Love is Blind or anything that's really like on Netflix, Prime, or Disney. So whatever works for you. Sometimes I'll even just like listen to music just to see what's going to, oh, the Secret Life. Yeah, that's what it's called. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I'm on episode 3, I think now. Yeah, it's good for beating. Good for beating for me. So I dancing with her baby. Yeah, no, I just it's a it's an interesting show. At first I didn't think I was gonna watch it or like it, and then I think I had finished Gypsy Wedding. Oh, I heard that one's good too. I had finished a show recently. I can't even remember what I was watching. I know Love is Blind is coming back out again, I think next week. So I'm excited for that. Oh, I binged Bridgerton. That's what it was. So I am finished my first row now. So there's seven of the first color. I have eight of my second color, five of my middle, then you're mirroring, and then I have eight of that second color, seven of my last. So I'm going to give everyone here a moment to finish that first row. So again, you should have 18 beads going across at the bottom. So if you count them, there's 4, 4, 2, 4, 4. So that's 18. So take your time. I'll give you 2 minutes and then we're going to move on to the next step. I love the circle too. I tried watching the circle. I couldn't I couldn't get into it. I tried a couple times, like a couple of the different seasons. Oh, 90 Day Fiance, 90 Days the Other Way. That one, I don't know what it is. It's a guilty pleasure. Like it can't be like the regular 90 days, it has to be the other way. And I've seen on TikTok, I guess one of the latest seasons with the one participant who like goes to the Philippines with like $46. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this season. So I think that's gonna be next on my radar once I finish the Mormon Wives one is to go back to 90 Days the Other Way. And I just started getting my partner to watch Game of Thrones. He's never watched it. And I remember when I first watched Game of Thrones, I it didn't start until it was like on season 5. And one of my friends had said it was really good. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like it. And I watched the first episode and I was hooked. And I binged watched all 5 seasons in 2 weeks while I worked full time. So I'd go to work, go home, watch Game of Thrones for like hours until like 2 or 3 a.m., sleep, wake up, and go to work and do it all over again until I finished the whole thing. And I remember just like being crushed when I got to the final fifth season before the new one came out because I think it was like a year or two wait until the next season was coming out. And I was just so upset that I did that. True Blood. Oh yeah, I watched True Blood too when that first came out. I think I watched a few of the seasons for it and it was pretty good. I may have to rewatch it again to see. I'm sure it's hopefully aged very well. All right. Hopefully everyone has made it to this part. So again, you should have 18 beads on the bottom. There'll be 17 on the top. And as we go, because it's going to be making a triangle shape, there'll be one less bead each row until we get to the top where we're going to have 2 beads on the end. So now this part is where we get into our brick stitch. So this first part here is actually called a peyote. So now we're going to the brick where we're going to be picking up 2 beads that are going to be these 2 pieces on the end. So here we have 4 of that marigold, 3 of the marigold. So the next row I need 2 marigold. So I'm going to pick up 2 of that color. So I have my 2 beads. Try and get my camera to focus. There we go. I have 2. So this part I'm going to repeat a few times just to show you because I know it can be a little trickier, especially like if I can't show you in person to do hand over hand. On the top here when you're holding the piece, so this is the part where there's 17 beads. You kind of see like the thread in between the beads that's holding it together. We'll call them just kind of like a stitch. So here you're going to see there's 2 stitches. There is 1 stitch here and 1 stitch here. So you can even just go like, here's the first bead, the second bead, and the stitch right before that third bead. You're going to put your needle in between. And it's like just that stitch that's kind of holding this bead in place or this needle in place. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull your needle through. And then your 2 beads are going to be sitting on the top of the end of the third row like this. And then 1 second, we just have to admit somebody in here. Okay. So right now you can see there's those 2 beads now. So what we're going to do is, no problem. We're going to take our needle. You're going to go through those 2 beads, starting towards the center. Don't come from the outside. You want to come from the center of where the beadwork is. and you're going to go through those 2 beads with your needle. And you're going to pull your thread all the way through. And it's still going to kind of sit a little weird on the top of that 3rd row. But what you do now at this point is going again through the center. You go through the beads, but only the 1 bead. So I should say you go through the bead, just through that 1 bead that's closer inwards. And then you're going to pull your needle through. And what this is going to do is it's going to force it to sit properly on top of your work, like so. And it's only the start of each row where we do this process with the 2 beads. And after that, the whole rest of the row is going to be super easy in comparison. Like you'll pick this part up really fast. It's just this first part at the start of every row. So I'm going to do that one more time. Give me a second. Let me undo this. All right, so I'm just going to rethread my needle, and then I'm going to show you how to do that first part one more time again. This. So if you, with your kit, you will have received a pair of like pink pliers that are also good for wire cutting. I included those only because you don't want to use scissors when you're trimming this. I mean, you could, but fire line, it's fishing line. So if you're using your scissors and you have like say good scissors, you're going to dull your scissors out really fast. So using a wire cutter is going to be definitely preferred when you're cutting fire line. All right, so I'm all threaded back up again and needled and ready to go. So we finished that bottom row where they have the 2 rows going across, where the bottom part is 18 beads long, second row 17 beads long. And now we're going to start working on that 3rd row. So the first part here again is called a peyote stitch, and the rest of the piece is going to be a brick stitch. So to start adding on, you're going to pick up 2 beads from that first color we did. So as we're moving up, the colors here on their end are going to get smaller and smaller by row as this middle part expands upwards. So here I have 4 of that marigold on the bottom. And then there's 3 of the marigold in that second row. So now I need 2. So I'm going to pick up 2 of those of that first color that I had. And then when you're holding your piece, we're going to actually hold it in between our fingers where we see the shorter part of those 2 rows facing upwards. So the part where there's 17 and the longer part where there's 18 will be down. So you want to see that shorter part where there's the 17. And then there's kind of like these stitches you'll see in between holding the beads together. You're going to count 2 beads over from the end where the thread is sticking out right now. So 1, 2, and you're going to go in between that thread before the 3rd bead. So in between the 2nd and the 3rd bead. And you're going to put your needle between, and you're going to just pull your needle through it. Again, it's going to probably sit really weird. It'll look something like that. What you're going to do is between those 2 new beads, or through those 2 new beads we added on, going this way, going from like the inside to outside of the beadwork, you're going to put your needle through those 2 new beads. And then you're just going to give it a nice little snug pull. Again, not too tight. You don't want to break anything. And then it's still going to look like it's not sitting properly. It's because there's one more step to this. It's putting your needle through just the 1 bead closest towards the inside and pulling it all the way through. So not through both, just through that 1 bead only that's closest towards the inside. Then you're going to pull your thread all the way through. You might have to like give it a little tug or play around with it a little bit. But once it's done, it should be sitting nicely with the rest of your beads. And this is called a brick stitch. So now the rest of it, what we're going to do is if you have your template open, you're going to see it tell you what beads are going to go next. So here we only need 2 of that first color. Here we can still do 4 of our second color. So now we're going to do 4 of that next color. So for me, it's that burnt pumpkin, but you do them one at a time. So you pick up 1 bead, looking at those top stitches again, the next stitch over, we're going to put your needle through. You're going to pull your needle out. And then through the bottom of that new bead we just added on, you're going to put your needle up through it. So I'm trying to use my camera at the same time to make sure it's all in focus. So you're going to put your needle up through it, and you're going to pull it through. And then we're just going to repeat this process all the way to the very end of this row. So now I have 3 beads sitting on there. So I need 3 more of that second color. So for me, again, it's that burnt pumpkin. So you're going to pick up 1 bead, look at the top part, go to that next stitch over, put your needle in between it with that new bead, pull it through. Then you're going to take your needle, going through the bottom of that new bead we just added on, and pull that through. So it's like we're laying down like little bricks one by one, stacking them. So now I have 4 beads on that third row. So we'll repeat this process again and pick up 1 bead. You're going to look at the top again where those stitches are. You're going to take your needle and go through that next stitch beside it with your bead attached. Pull it all the way through. And then with your needle, you're going to go through the bottom of that new bead we just added. Pull it all the way through. And then you add on another bead. So we're on that second color right now. I just need 1 more of that second color, and then I'm going to the middle color. So you pick up a bead. You're going to look at the top again. Go to that next stitch over. Put your needle in between. Pull it all the way through. And that new bead we just put on, you're going to stick your needle through the bottom of it and pulling it all the way through. So now we have 6 beads on for that third row. And now we're moving to the third color, that middle color in here. So the middle color is going to get bigger row by row. So we had 2, then we had 3 in the second row. So in this fourth row, I need 4 across. So I'm going to do 4 of that squash color going across. So you'll pick up 1 bead. You're going to look at the top again, go 1 stitch over from the new bead we put on already. Put your needle in between it. Pull it all the way through. And then through the bottom of that new bead we just put on right there, you go up through it and then pull your thread all the way through, and it'll have it sitting nice and stacked on top of the other beads. So you're going to repeat that process again, going all the way through to the very end, and then we're going to get started on the next row. So this has been nice to do, like doing like these like virtual like meetups or chats and stuff. For anyone who follows me on Instagram, you know how I share a bit about like my own personal life. And if you don't know, I am currently almost in my 3rd trimester with my first child. I'm very excited, but the journey has been a little not how I expected. Prior to being pregnant, I was quite active and I thought I'd be able to remain pretty active, but I had actually a really hard first trimester where I was, do you ever, oh, I've never used, no, you don't need to wax fire line. So when you're waxing thread, like a nylon thread. You're doing it just to condition it and to help it from fraying. So that's when you would use something like you could use like a beeswax or a different kind of thread conditioner. With a nylon or with a fire line, it's fishing line. Um, it won't fray the same way like a nylon thread would fray. So you don't have to be worried about waxing this or conditioning it. It'll be good. If you have to undo a piece a bunch of times with fire line because it's kind of like a braided fishing line, eventually it might look like it's starting to fray a little bit, but for the most part, you don't need to worry about conditioning this at all. It's just any other kind of like nylon thread like this that you would be conditioning. So if you're using like a Nymo, so I think this one is Nymo size D. If you're using like a Miyuki one, sometimes some of the nylon threads come pre-conditioned and they'll let you know that they're already like conditioned with some sort of a protector from it needing to from it having to fray. But for some of them like this one here, it would fray without the conditioner. So fire line, you definitely don't need to worry about waxing it. Congratulations. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the first trimester was hard. I didn't expect to be as sick as I was. So eventually I went on that anti-nausea medication that helps with like morning sickness and stuff because like that was not expected. Like I thought I would get sick, but I didn't think I'd be getting sick to that extent. So either is I was super nauseous where like I couldn't do anything because if I moved, I felt like I was going to throw up. And with having to adjust and build up tolerance to the doxylamine, I was super duper tired. So I was either super sick where I couldn't move or so tired that I had no energy to do anything. So finally, by like the 16th, 17th week, I started feeling more normal, but I still am very nauseous, unfortunately, without the medication. But it's safe for pregnancy, which is okay for me. So it helps me function throughout the day. But yeah, I'm really excited. 14 more weeks to go. And I'm in my last semester, or no, my last year of my undergrad. So I'll be finishing in April, most likely. And then I will have my BSW, and I plan to do my MSW next, but I've mostly been doing everything online these past handful of months just because I also found out through my blood work that my protection for measles had worn down. And apparently that happens for some people where your protection may wear off. So it's good to do regular checkups and blood work just to kind of see if you are vaccinated, if any of your vaccines need boosters, because some boosters you can't get while you're pregnant because they're live vaccines, like the measles. So I've been trying not to do too many public events because I currently live in Ontario and there is a measles outbreak right now. So I've been a little bit more careful. I spent the last couple months back home in my community where it's a really small population and relatively safe. And now I'm back in Toronto and I've attended a couple events, but I don't stay very long. And I spend a lot of time at home now just because it's safer. So here now we have finished 3 rows. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to kind of get to the end. I know it's a process learning those first few steps. Again, if you are someone who's experienced the beating, you can continue along and go all the way to the top. You don't have to wait if you don't want to. That's a-okay. And for anyone who is a beginner, take your time. Again, this is being recorded and it will be shared later on. So you can go back and watch the steps to see where you may have maybe missed a step or need to correct something. When you are starting off as a beater, it's important to kind of be gentle with yourself. Like this should be a relaxing activity. It does take a lot of patience. It requires a lot of dexterity in your hands, and it will build up the muscles in your hands if you don't have that dexterity built up already. And don't expect your first piece to come out perfect. It's okay for it to be a little wonky and to have thread showing, because how else are you supposed to see progress and improvement? It doesn't just happen. Like some people might be amazing first time beaters and just pick it up instantly. And for others, like you might have to work at it quite a bit, but with some time and practice, you'll get better. Um, when I first started, I used to have like a Ziploc bag full of all my whoopsie pieces. Oh, look, I made a mistake. Can I just seen it right now? Um, uh, I had like a Ziploc of my whoopsie pieces and I would just like hold on to it. And I lost it in one of my moves. And I wish I still had it just so I could see like the progress from when I first started till now, just because I know some of those pieces looked probably really like bulky. I'm sure there's probably like threads like they're super visible and I don't know, it just I think it's nice. I think it's very humbling and it also gives you like a lot of appreciation for where you're coming to now from where you were before. Yeah. I Yeah, I think that bucket is probably something fun you could go through every now and again, just to be like, oh yeah, I did this. But it's also really cool to kind of like see pieces that you did a long time ago and be like, ooh, I want to remake that and just kind of like see like if it looks a little different. Because even like with your skills improving, you may discover that there's certain materials you like working with more. So when I first started, I used to use a lot of nylon. Like I only use nylon actually. So that's like it's this type of thread here. It's almost like what you would use if you were sewing, like a sewing thread, but this is a little different than a sewing thread. And I would see the threads. Like if you go through a piece too many times, like it's it's bound to be maybe a little bulky or you'll see things bulging out and I just didn't understand how some beaters got their stuff to look like real nice and crisp, and you wouldn't see that, or their beadwork would be really stiff. And then at one event I was at, someone had told me that a beater for a medallion used nylon or fireline. And I was like hesitant at first because like it definitely does cost a little bit more. So like this is a 300 yard 4 pound of fireline. If you go to a bead store, you might be paying quite a bit for it just because they have it branded specifically for like beaters kind of, but it's the same thing. So like here it's called the Bead Smith, but it's fishing line. I could buy this at Canadian Tire, but they don't sell it in the 4 pound. They sell it in the 6 pound or 8 pound and up. You can for a beater use 4 pound, or you can even use a 6 pound. So this is the one I got from Canadian Tire. This is 125 yards and this was less than $30. I can't remember how much it was. It must have been like between 20 and 30. And then this I bought from a couple other beaters. So there's one in so-called Canada called White Otter Designs, and they sell uh like findings and beading supplies as well as beadwork on their website. So they source and they sell 4 pound 300 yard fire line for like $50, which is a really good deal for the size because the size you can't just get. If you go to like a beading shop, like say in Toronto, there's a couple I can think of, you might buy like a 50-yard spool and you're spending already $20. So it's definitely a better deal to either buy it from maybe another like smaller business that passes on the savings onto you. And then another place I get mine from is this American company called or American business called Fire Mountain Gems. And that's where I also order a lot of my Delica beads because for me it's a better price and they have a huge selection. And then they have like the fire line and stuff in the 4 pound that I like. Is starting fourth row same as third? Yes. So every row moving forward after you do that first 2 rows, those first 2 rows again is the peyote. Third row all the way to top is all going to be a brick stitch. So you're just going to repeat the same steps over and over again. So let me just finish off my third row here, and then I'll show you again how to start off the row. Again, for experienced beaters, just follow along the template to kind of see how your colors should be laying in the pattern. And you can just move ahead as you wish. So here we go. My third row is complete. So now I'm going to move to the fourth row. So here, again, the outside colors I chose to be that like slightly transparent matte marigold color. These outside colors as we go up will get smaller as they get to the end. So here there was 4 on the bottom, 3 on the middle row, 2 on this next row. So now we're going to the fourth row. This outside color here, I'm only going to need 1 bead and then 1 bead of the second color. So I'm going to pick up 1 marigold and 1 of the silver line like burnt orange. And then I am going to look at the top where my thread is coming out of. I'm going to count 2 beads over from that third row we just did 1, 2. And in that thread, that stitch in between the second bead and third bead, I'm going to put my needle through. And I'm going to push it all the way through and pull it. And through those 2 new beads I just put on right here, I'm going to go from the inside in, or inside part in through both of those beads that I just added on. And I'm going to pull my needle through it. So then you go through that bead closer to the inside one more time, just that 1 bead, not both of them this time. And then you're going to pull it all the way through it one more time. And that's going to get this to sit properly. And that's the beginning of the row. And then after that, it's the easier part where you're just doing 1 bead at a time all the way across. So I'll show you that step one more time for our beginners. Experienced beaders, just move ahead. If you have any questions about beading supplies, my beading journey, where to find supplies, definitely put it in the chat and I'll answer your questions the best I can with recommendations and whatnot. Yeah, I really like the fire line too. I think it's easier to work with, especially if you're doing a flat piece. So if you're doing like an applique flat stitch or like a brick stitch, it just makes the work look a lot like tighter as well as not as bulky. With the fringe, of course, you're going to need the nylon, but it's pretty cool that you can at least buy the nylon in different colors. So if you're doing a piece that's say like mostly red fringe, and you could buy like a red nylon thread instead. So again, we're here at the beginning of the fourth row. So we're going to pick up 1 bead of that first color because that row now is almost complete for that first color being out. And then we're going to pick up 1 bead for that second color. So I picked up 1 marigold and I have 1 burnt orange. You're going to count 2 beads over from the top and go in between that second bead and third bead under the stitch. Pull your needle through. Starting inward from the beadwork, you're going to put your needle between those 2 new beads, going through it, pulling out, and then going through just that 1 bead closest to the center of the beadwork, just the one, not both. Put your needle through and pull it again. And then you're going to give it a nice little tug, nothing too tight. You don't want to break it or rip it or bust the bead. And then your bead should be sitting nice. So now we're going to go back to that 1 bead at a time, going all the way across. So we'll need in total, there's that 1 outer color, 4 of your second color. Now we're going to expand this middle row. So we're going to have 5 of that middle color and then mirror it on the other side. So 4 and then 1. There are a lot of like really great like indigenous bead companies or businesses that sell beads that you can support if you're looking to expand your collection. A lot of the ones I found, I've either seen at powwows or seeing other people tag them through like Instagram or Facebook. I find social media can be both a hindrance, but also a great support system, especially for small businesses who are looking to connect with each other, especially if you're trying to support other like indigenous businesses as well. So some of my favorite bead shops or beaders who carry beading supplies would be like um who is it? Oh yeah, so like White Otter Designs. They sell Fireline, vintage beads, gold plated beads, silver beads. They source like their findings from other small businesses, so you can get really good high quality findings. So that's where I get like my gold filled findings from sometimes. Another one would be J Shine Designs. They're also based out in like the west area, so they're in Alberta, and they also sell like Fireline, vintage beads, and sometimes like those like more finer metal beads, so like 24 karat plated gold delicas or silver beads. Um, Welteg, Welteg, I think is based on I think it's based in Quebec, possibly. I can't remember for sure, but that one's spelled Welteg. And they sell a lot of like beading supplies as well as like other things that you can get as gifts. And they're an indigenous business also, and they sell hides sometimes too. So I got smoke a home brain tan smoked deer hide from them a few years ago, and it's like beautiful. I love it. I saw some of it left, and it smells amazing. Um, there is culture beads, but spelled CVLTVRE, I think, beads on Instagram. They sell different types of delicas, seed beads, vintage beads, and other like findings and stuff you might need for your supplies. Can you share more about the findings you use? Oh, yeah, no, I tried looking at like Michael's for like my beading stuff, and I've never like been happy with the quality of materials they use. For my beading stuff, so when I first started, I used to go to the shop in Toronto called Ardon, and they have some really good stuff, but over the years, I do come across a lot of people who have sensitive skin, and I do too sometimes. So for some findings, they might like cause my ears to like get really sensitive or scab. So I've really been looking hard for findings that are higher quality that so more people can like wear them. There is so again, White Otter Designs, you could buy like the kidney hooks. So let me just grab those up. You could buy kidney hooks from them. They get them from a small business. They're either in like sterling silver, or they're going to be like gold filled. So there's a difference between something that's gold filled and gold plated. Um, looking for the findings. So something that's gold plated. So these are from Arnon. They're gold plated kidney hooks. It means like they have 18 karat gold plated on them, but this can easily scratch off. So if you have sensitive ears, they could be good for a while. They're nickel free, but eventually that gold's gonna come off like no problem. With something that's gold filled, let's see, I think I have some in here, I'm pretty sure. Here we go. So these are from White Otter Design. They're gold filled. And what it is like there's a really good metal base underneath. And there's the way the process works from how I was explained to me was it's almost like a gold sheet or something that's put around it that won't scratch off. So it's a higher quality. It does cost quite a bit more because there's, I guess, a lot more gold that's used in the product as well. So like this, I think a pack of 5 pairs or so, I can't remember. It costs, I think, almost like 40 bucks or 50 bucks. But I use it on like some of my pieces that are a little bit more. Or if someone like has really sensitive ears, like I might recommend these. Versus this was like 320 and there's 20 pieces, so that's 10 pairs. Um, this is going to be the higher quality item. It's going to last a lot longer. And if you have sensitive ears, it'll be a lot better for you in the long run. But if you're starting out, like beading supplies can be really expensive. So definitely understandable. Just make sure when you're listing things or you're selling things that you're letting people know. So like 24 gold plated versus filled are both very different pieces. For my Other findings that I get that aren't as expensive, but still cost a little bit more. I started ordering from Fire Mountain Gems a few years ago, and they were like one of my go-tos. So these here are stainless steel wire guards, as well as like my earring hooks in my jump rings and stuff. They're all like stainless steel, or they'll be surgical steel, just because they are much better for like sensitive ears. They do cost a little bit more. So like these ear wires, these ones are stainless steel. I can't remember how much it was for this pack. Definitely more than what I would have bought if I bought it from like Michael's or something, because of the material, but they're great for really sensitive skin. So you're not going to be worried about someone having an allergic reaction to the material that you're using. So I think when you're looking for pieces, try to look for either surgical or stainless steel, or something that's gonna, if you're going to go for a more precious metal, something that's either going to be stainless steel or sterling silver. Well, no, sterling silver would be the more precious one. Sterling silver or gold filled, not gold plated. Gold plated, again, it'll just scratch right off. Gold filled is gonna last you for a very, 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 very long time, and you won't be worried about that gold coming off of the piece. Other like brands that you can support, or businesses that are indigenous that have beading supplies, would be like Running Fox Beads. Sometimes we'll sell like vintage beads. They're Toronto based, and they do online. All these businesses do online sales. For supplies, like if you're like someone who does like with fabrics and whatnot, there's Cookum Scrunchies. They sell fabrics online. Um, Cedar Lily, no, what is it? Yeah, Cedar Lily Beads, I believe. They're based in Peterborough, and they sell so many different types of like Muki and sea beads, delicas, and a lot of different beading supplies. And they're also like a fantastic supplier to order things from. I've ordered from them a couple times as well. All right, so now I am done my 4 rows. So now I'm going to the fifth. So here you can see my outside color. The top has only one color in that fourth row. So now I'm no longer using that outside color anymore, but we will need it when we get to the bottom. So now we're going to be focusing on just that second color we use, and this middle color here, the third color. And we're going to start off by picking up 2 of that second color. So I'm going to go with my burnt orange. I'm going to go 2 beads over in between that second and third bead where that stitches, pulling it between all the way through. How expensive are vintage beads? It will vary depending on the type of bead and the supplier. So for instance, I keep like my more precious beads like separate. Like I have a couple of Ziploc baggies that I do. These guys here are called, I think they're orange heart vintage beads. They're like the center part of them is white, and they're a little irregular in size. I can't remember what the time frame these were from. I think it was like the early 1900s, and what area they came from. I can't remember if they were Venetian. But something like this, me for the size range for about, I bought these a long time ago. Maybe about $10. Like it's not too outrageous if you're gonna be using the supplies. Like some of my favorite ones are like do I have any more of them? I might have used them all. There was like this really beautiful kind of like pearly, like Venetian bead that was a little bit bigger in size. Like these here, I think are size 10. These ones are kind of like more of like a turquoise color. Um, I'd have to look and figure out again like the approximate like time frame that they were made and from where. But beaters, when they resell this stuff, like you can tell like they had to be cleaned. They do go through like a little bit of cleaning process. But I find like using vintage beads adds a lot more character sometimes to certain pieces, and that they are really nice. Like it's a nice like almost like luxury like little detail you can add to something. And like especially if you find a vintage bead that you really like. So there was one I found, and a few sellers were selling it. They were like this really beautiful like pearl color, and they came in a couple different sizes. Like I think it was like a size 8 and a size 10. And I wish I bought more of them because now I don't see them as often anymore, so kind of regrets. This is my first time with Delicas. Do you always use Delicas or just for brick stitch? For a brick stitch, I'll always use a Delica. Like I've tried it with like a regular seed bead or like a Miyuki bead. So those are the ones that are like more like rounded and they will look like I have a lot of supplies. So I'm just trying to find the right drawer. So they're more rounded like this. So this here is a Miyuki seed bead, size 11. They won't sit as flat as a Delica will. Delicas sit really nice for a brick stitch and you get like a lot more detail with them. But these are great if you're doing like French earrings too, or if you're doing like a flat stitch, they're great. Like I'll use Delicas either for like a brick stitch, I'll use them for French as well. And sometimes I might use them in like a flat stitch piece. The only thing is because they're so like flat on both sides of the openings, they don't curve as nicely as a seed bead would. So these would be really nice for like a flat stitch piece, or they could be really nice for a French earring. It's just, even though they're the same size, like these are both 11s, these are bulkier. So, and they're heavier. So this would be like a heavier earring if I was doing the same count as these, and they're going to look bigger. So now we're on that 5th row. So you got the beads on. So then I went through both beads and now I'm just going through that one bead only that's closest to the center, just to help everything sit nice and flat, like so. So this is where we're at now. So we're here. And now I need to add on 2 more of that second color. Then I'm gonna go into my middle color and then go back to this second color on the end. And we're gonna continue to work upwards. Don't forget, if you have any questions, you can definitely put it in the chat and I'll answer them the best I can. Experienced beaters, please go ahead. You don't have to wait. The template was mailed out emailed out yesterday. And for beginners, if you need me to repeat a step, let me know and I'll do my best to do so. Also, that these sessions are recorded and you will be able to rewatch this video later on at your own time and leisure and go at your own pace. So right now it's 3:15. Within the next 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes or so, we'll be done this top part. And then we're gonna move right into the bottom. Doing the bottom is, let's start. Hold on one second. Amanda, are you able to disable? Oh wait, no, I can do it. I have, never mind, I did it. Ignore me. The bottom part, when we get to that second half, is pretty much the same as doing the top part. So once you get the hang of the brick stitch, it's honestly just at that point, it's how much time it takes you to do it. But as long as you finish this top part here, including adding on the wire guard, you'll be good. I think one of the nice things about people learning how to bead, if you're not a beader yet, it's one, it could possibly be like a new hobby of yours. And two, I think it gives people a lot more appreciation for the amount of time, effort, and resources go into beadwork. So when you're seeing people selling at markets or online, hold on. Sorry, just make sure that when you're on here, please, for any participants, we're not going to be doing any screen sharing today. It's just going to be my screen to be going through here, or else we're going to be on here for a long time. Okay, no problem. It's nice just because like you kind of see the value of the piece a lot more if you hadn't already. Because some people will go to like a market, and I was guilty of it too, like a long time ago, like seeing a pair of earrings. I'm like, oh my God, $100 or $200, that's ridiculous. And then when I got into it and saw how much time it takes, I was like, oh yeah. Sometimes I'll like see beaters and I'll feel like they underprice themselves. And I don't like I, it's, we want to try to uplift each other as much as possible. And it's hard, especially when sometimes people feel like they have to undercharge themselves just to move their pieces. But you'll find your market or your people's in time. Like some people will start off really well and they move really fast with how they do their stuff. And other times people might be at it for years before they kind of like find their people who want to follow along their journeys and whatnot. Like I'm sure all of us can probably think of some like really well-known beaters who do such amazing work that like we wish we could have pieces from their collections in our own collections. But because this is like a what do you call it? Slow fashion. Um, Sometimes people look at these as like heirloom pieces depending on who you're buying it from and how they made it with the materials they made, because they probably could be passed down. Other times, um, people see it as like a luxury, especially depending on like the materials that are being used in the piece. So you kind of see the cost of things when you're starting off. So like for me, if I was just to price out some stuff here on the mat, this was about $50 for this fire line. This needle I use is a tulip number 12. And when I buy these, it comes with only two needles and it costs between $20 and $30, depending on where I'm getting it from, for two needles. But they're great and they last me a while as long as I'm taking care of my needles. And once they start getting dull and I know they're not doing good anymore, is when I have to swap out um these vials of delicas. This is a good size. This is 7.5 grams. Um, this costs US. I think these are about $4 US or so. It depends on the color as well as the finish. Like some of the beads can be like, again, if it's like gold, it'll be a smaller quantity most likely, and it's gonna be a lot higher price. Like a 2.5 gram vial of 24 karat plated delicate beads will probably cost you about 13 to $15, maybe. Um, some beads, like if they're Duracoat, so whenever people are buying like delicate beads or even sea beads, if you see one that says the word Duracoat on it, so this one's a Duracoat. It's hard to see it, but this is Duracoat. What it means is it's made with like a special coating on it where the color won't transfer. And if you buy a bead that doesn't have that Duracoat label on it, with wear, like it touching your skin or rubbing against other materials, sometimes you'll notice like the color of your beads fading. And that's not, it doesn't have anything to do with like the beater itself. It has everything to do with the way the beads finish. So you can still pay a lot of money for a delicate bead and you might still see it fade. So try to look for Duracoat if you're looking for an investment on something that's going to last longer. Um, this bead mat here that I have, I bought, this was like a treat to myself that I bought last year. I was really hesitant on it. It's great. I love it. I'm happy I bought it. But this thing was like, I think $120 for a beading tray. But it prevents my beads from flying all over the place. I could stick my needle in it. The quality of it's pretty good, and I use it on road trips. Again, it was an investment and like a treat to myself. I don't regret it, but it's not cheap. A good pair of wire cutters or a decent pair. Like I think these were maybe 10 to $12. They weren't bad, but I've had these now for like 4 years, I want to say, or so, and they're gonna probably last me a while. When you get into like actually buying more beading materials, so I started getting into like buying things like Charlotte cuts, and I love a good Charlotte cut. So what a Charlotte cut is, it's a seed bead. So they're rounded, but they have two cuts in each bead that makes them reflective and they're beautiful. So here you can kind of see the shine and it's like kind of sparkly. That's because of the cuts in the bead. So it's just a seed bead that has been cut in two different places on it that kind of give it that like reflectiveness. But these are definitely going to be a lot more, especially when you're buying a hank of them. And a hank would be like if you're buying them on a string, you'll probably get like maybe like 8 strings on it with your hank. And depending on the color, like it'll maybe be about 10 to 15 bucks, maybe a little less or more depending on the color you're buying, and they come in different sizes. So beading supplies can be really expensive when you're starting out. And then you kind of like learn what you like and what you don't like to use. So for a long time too, not a long time, so these are Swarovski crystals. You cannot buy them anymore as a crafter. Like there's some stores that might still sell them because they license them out to certain like bigger businesses that are able to sell certain ones, or they may have a business may have had overstock that they're still selling. But these, when they were selling, you could buy something like this size maybe for about $15 to $20 US per pair. Um, I had bought a bunch of these once I started knowing that Swarovski was rebranding how they were doing their business. So now they are more of a luxury, they're rebranded to be more of a luxury piece again. Before you could like go to Arden and buy like sunglasses that would have Swarovski crystals on them. Now you can't really do that anymore. Like there's pieces that will still have Swarovskis. It's a protected title. Um, Also the way they're made, they're really high quality. So you can buy like other like Austrian crystals, and I can't remember what they're called, like V9s or something like that. But you can buy other Austrian crystals or crystal companies, but the in comparison, the Swarovski crystals are still going to be like a higher quality crystal. So if you see pieces when you're at markets and stuff, and they're advertised as being Swarovski and they're genuine Swarovski crystals, like you're probably not going to see that as often as you did before, like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, just because you can't get these anymore. So I have a decent sized stash that I've been hoarding because I'm hoarding them. I don't want to use them because I know I can't get them again. So once in a while I'll use them and I'll sell a pair or two, but not as often as I would have before because they're hard to get, and I don't really know if I want to go into using the other kind of Austrian crystals because I know they're not the same. I wish I had known to invest in materials before I started because I spent a ton on cheap stuff, and you could tell. Yeah. But that's the thing is like when you're just starting to, you don't know if you're gonna love it or not. Like some people might invest a lot and then find that they just keep it on the side and they never use it. So you can see it as almost like these were your practice materials and pieces, and you can use it to like test out ideas in your head. Or if you like know anyone who else is starting out, you can always like gift it to someone who else is a beginner beater. Um, I yeah, I started by using just like nylon thread. Um, didn't really buy the Fireline, I thought it was too expensive. But after once I first started using it, for me, like I couldn't go back just because I love the way the pieces look so much better. And you can tell too, like when pieces are sold and priced the way they are, sometimes it reflects the cost of the material too. So again, I said I use like a I'm just trying to look right. Here we go. Rain Tan Smoked Hide. So yeah, no problem. Definitely watch the tutorial if you need to. And thank you so much for joining us. I just had someone leaving. This is hide that I bought from Multeg. It's deer. It is, it smells really good. Like I just took it out of the bag right now. Like I've kept it zipped up because I don't want the smell to go away. But even like once you use it, like I have pieces that I bought from other artists that are made with like a similar material, but like a piece for the size that this is, I paid like 300 bucks for it. So I don't use it for everything. I use it on some things, and it's going to definitely be reflected. So if I'm using this, I'm most likely going to be using like the Swarovski crystals. I might be using like the gold plated beads, or like silver beads and stuff like that, because it is more of a luxury piece for sure. I even have like pearls in my collection that I'll use, like fresh water pearls from Japan that are pretty expensive. I bought like a bunch of like Swarovski pearls too before they stopped selling them. So it's always good to know what kind of materials you're using, as well as when you're buying something, what materials, where did you get the hide from? Welteg, WELTEG on Instagram and their website as well. So Welteg. Um, it's good to be aware. So like when you start seeing pieces in person and like their advert, sometimes people will tell you like what they use. When they're telling you that, it's because sometimes people feel like they have to justify the cost of their piece because they get undervalued so much. You might find a really beautiful, like I just bought my sister a pair of beautiful like earrings that had Swarovski crystals on them, on smoked tanned, I think it was mousse, and they were beautiful at the Indigenous Arts Market here in Toronto that happened in June. And I think I only got them for like 140. She had them on sale from like 170 because she was doing the market. And like she was like trying to like explain to me all the materials and stuff, but like just smelling them and holding them in my hand and looking at them and seeing the materials, like, yeah, she probably could have charged more. Um, but oftentimes I feel like we have to over explain ourselves when we're selling things, just because some people might not understand the amount of money and material that just goes into buying stuff, let alone sourcing. Um, like I am aware of what sellers I buy my stuff from for my materials now because I've had to do the research, or I may have gotten recommendations, or I've tried people out myself to kind of see what works for me and what doesn't. And I'll know what businesses I'll go back to and which ones I won't, just based on what worked for me. So it's even like the time that goes into like learning to like source where you're going to buy your supplies from, figuring out what colors you want to use. Sometimes like when you're ordering online, you might buy the wrong thing. So you invest into things you might not even use. And this is everything that goes into a project before you even get to the beating of the item itself. If you can smell it, it might be a smoked hide. I had like one person tell me, non-indigenous, they bought a pair of earrings from the Indigenous market in Toronto a few months ago, and they're beautiful. They were expensive. She's like, but I don't like, the only thing is I don't like the smell and I don't know what I can do to get rid of it. I'm like, I asked her because I had an idea of like the few vendors who were there who were selling the smoked hide. And I was like, did you get it from this person? And then I just explained to her the process. Because smoked hide takes like literally months to a year to do. It's a whole process that takes time. So it makes sense why a piece would be so expensive, just because there's so much time and energy that goes into a single piece of hide. So I told her, I'm like, this is like what the artist has to do. And like that artist who she got it from, like smokes their own hide themselves. So I'm like, the value of the piece that they sell it for versus probably all the time and energy that went into it. Oh, like you want it to have that smell. Like it's actually like having that smell first, I guess for some people, I guess I can see why it'd be more of a deterrent. But I was just like, oh, you can like just the smell alone, like that's luxury right there. Like that smells really good. So I'm going a little faster now because I just want to get to this top part. I'm sure some of you may have already gotten there. Some of you might be a little bit behind, and that's okay. Again, this is going to be recorded, so you can follow back at your own leisure. So once I get to the top, I'm going to show you how to do the wire guard and the jump ring. And then I'll show you how to get started on the bottom. We'll probably have this wrapped up by 4:30. Generally for like a piece like this, 2.5 hours, I think is probably pretty fair for one side to do for a beginner, maybe 3 to 4 hours too, depending on, again, your dexterity in your hands. For someone who's a little bit more advanced and who's been doing this for a while, you could probably do this in about an hour, hour and a half, maybe a little faster, a little slower. Again, depending on dexterity and energy and what you're doing at the time, if you're distracted. If I'm like highly caffeinated and I'm watching a really good show, then it might take me about an hour, hour and a half if I'm invested in the show at the same time. But if I'm highly caffeinated and I just have music on, then I could probably go a little faster. Yeah, sometimes it can take really long. Like I did my first medallion, for instance, last year that I got commissioned to do, and I did not realize how long it would take to do, and I definitely under like for the size itself, and the materials used, like I probably could charge more just in comparison to the market. I did like ask friends who I know of who do that kind of work and they commission or they can be commissioned to make that kind of those pieces. And they kind of told me like their price ranges and stuff. So I get it if you're like a faster beater and you're used to doing that kind of a size piece, but I probably would have definitely charged just a little bit more than what I did just because it took so long, like the amount of hours, like I put in definitely over 50 hours into that piece. Yeah, no worries. Definitely watch the recording. Thanks for joining us. For those who are still here, don't worry, we'll be done within the hour. If you have to go, that's okay. Again, it'll be recorded and it will be shared with you later on to watch back at your own pleasure and pace. So again, I'm just working a little faster now so I can get to that top part to show you how to do the wire guard and the jump ring. You can put any comments or messages in the chat. I'm watching at the same time as I'm doing this to just try to make sure I'm answering any questions you might have. Yeah, no problem. Those first few steps are the only ones you really need to know, like doing that first piece where you're doing that peyote for the first two rows, and then learning how to start off the brick stitch. Once you get that first, I would say 4 rows done, it's just very repetitive all the way through. So just rewatching those first few rows a few times will probably help you. And then once you get through it, then you'll probably pick up the pace. Just because this is an online Zoom session, I don't want this to be 4 hours, so I'm trying to keep it at 2.5 possibly, just because I know people do have to go as well. I usually watch Netflix while I'm beading. I think listening to all the information you're sharing is better. Oh yeah, no problem at all. I think it's nice to share sometimes like where we get our stuff from. Definitely no gatekeeping because number one, I want to like promote other indigenous businesses that we can support, small businesses because we got to help each other. And two, like sometimes it's hard to find like good quality materials that we're gonna like and like we're investing our money into something, right? So it sucks sometimes when you buy something, even from like a big uh box store and the materials suck because it can be so it feels like such a waste. And I try not to waste any of my stuff. So too, so like when I start upgrading my materials and I start using things from different things that I like better, so like switching to surgical steel and stainless steel bindings for most of my pieces that don't contain like the gold filled or stainless silver, um, or sterling silver, I mean, I donate actually. So I just donated a bunch of stuff, I would say in the springtime. And then as well, when I like sometimes when I'm doing my moves, if there's materials I know that I have way too much of or I'm not going to use, and there's still really good materials, I'll donate it as well. And I'll usually like post it on Instagram when that happens. I'm like, hey, I have all this stuff, and I'll share photos, and people will come by and pick it up just because like there's no need for it to go to waste. And if I know how much they could be, right? It's expensive. I'd rather like it go to someone else who can use it, and then maybe they even eventually at some point share some of their materials to someone else. Like it just feels like a domino, like a good domino effect. So no gatekeeping here. All right, so I'm almost to the top. As you can see here, when I get to the top, we'll have two beads, and that's when you know you're at the end. You could go to the end where you have just one bead, but the way we're putting on this wire guard, I think it just looks better with the two on there, but it's really up to you and your preference if you're an experienced beader. If you are a beginner, try to maybe stick to the template and just do it to the two beads. So when we get to this top row, so right now we have 3 at the top. The top is going to be 2. So you're going to pick up 2 beads and you're going to do it the same way we do the beginning of any other of these like brick stitch rows. Oh, hold on, I made a mistake. I'm gonna have to go back, but what you would do is you're just gonna go through that second thread, that stitch, pull your needle through, go through both beads, and then go through just the one to make it sit properly. And then once we get to that and you have the 2 beads on top, we're gonna add on our wire guard and our jump ring. And when you, like, if you make a knot or a mistake, what I suggest is you just need to backtrack. It might take a little bit of time to do, but it's like your thread's probably still good to use. And you don't want to like cut it or have to start a piece over again unless it's like really badly knotted. But one of the things with fireline I noticed too is sometimes it doesn't knot as horrendously as a nylon would. Like with a nylon thread, if you get a pretty good knot in there, there's a good chance you might be starting that piece over, having to cut it off and like thread through another piece of thread to the part where you were at, unless the piece is not salvageable at that point, which is really disheartening. But if you get in the habit of just using your needle carefully and taking off your beads to get back to the point where you may have made that mistake, I think I already got it. Then let's see, yeah. Then you save that thread and you save your piece and you save yourself a little bit of a headache of having to like start over. If you are feeling frustrated when this is happening, I suggest take a break and come back to it, because when you're putting that energy into the piece when you're making it, and you don't want to like put all that anger inside of it. Like this should be relaxing, it should be fun, it should be soothing. And it might just be a way to like as a reminder for yourself too, to like take your time and enjoy the process. Like sometimes I find if I have a deadline and I'm working on like a commission of pieces, if I'm like starting to make lots of knots, make lots of mistakes, busting beads, I'm like, okay, this is obviously a time where I need to take a break and step away from this, maybe for the rest of the day, and come back to it tomorrow. Because you don't want to be doing something like this and like it becoming a chore, because then it's not fun. You're not going to want to do it. So I just backtracked. I had a small little mistake and I just fixed it. So now I'm going back and going to that top row again. All right. So here we are. I am at the top. There are 2 beads here at the top. So now you're going to take your wire guard, which is this U looking piece that everyone received. So it's like a U shape like this. And then you're going to need your jump ring, which is like that circle piece. So all the materials you received are sterling silver for the finding. So they're high quality. They're great if you have sensitive skin. And again, because they're sterling silver, like silver does oxidize at times, especially like depending on if you're wearing lotions or perfumes in your natural body oils. So you may have to polish it from time to time or use like a silver cleaner on it. But it will be good if you have sensitive skin or if you're gifting it to somebody. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this wire guard. You can use like that plier thing that I included. And you can see I grabbed my wire guard with my pliers. I'm just gonna squeeze it together a little bit just to kind of close that U shape a bit. So it's not too wide, but leave a little bit of a space, because you are going to still need to add in your jump ring. Because if you make it too tight, you're not gonna be able to add that jump ring in. You should be able to place in your jump ring because you're gonna need it to loop your necklace chain through. So you can see they're attached together now. And for these jump rings, the circle part, They are a 5 millimeter, in case you're wondering on sizes, because they do come in different sizes. This is a good size for the necklace chain to come through. If you get something smaller, like a 4 millimeter, which I did by accident once, it almost becomes really, really hard for you to get a chain through. And you're gonna end up having to find other uses for that piece, like for this jump ring, or it's just gonna be something that becomes obsolete in your collection of findings. So now that we have our jump ring and you've bent it a little bit, so it's a little closer together, we're going to take our needle. You're gonna go through one end at the bottom, going up through it. And then when you get here to the top of your piece, you want to make sure you slip in that jump ring with your wire guard because they need to go together. I think for the most part, people got soldered wire guards, which means like for some or soldered jump rings, which means it's a circle where you might see that there's a line in it that was soldered together so it stays permanently closed. Or you may have received one that is unsoldered, which means you'll be able to bend it open and close it. I think for the most part, I included soldered, which means if you put this on, this jump ring or this wire guard, and you don't attach this, you're not going to be able to attach this piece after because it's soldered. So you can't open it and close it, which isn't the end of the world. When you put the chain on, the piece isn't going to lay flat on you though. It might twist and turn because it has to be readjusted. Or when you put your chain on, you have to put it in a way where it's kind of like looped around the wire guard a little different. You have this on so that your piece can sit nicely on your skin. Make sure you add on this jump ring with your wire guard before you put the needle through the other side of this wire guard here. So you would slip through the jump ring onto the wire guard. And then at this step, it's going to probably be hard to see, but you're just going to want to put your thread through that circle, that jump ring, and then put your needle down through the opposite what would we call it, entrance tube of the wire guard piece, the U-shaped one. So now we should be coming up through the wire guard and coming around it and then down out the other way. And you can see here at one bead is where the thread comes out. Now we want to put our needle going down the bead on the other side at the top. So we're connecting everything together so that they stay nice and secure. And it should look something like this. And to make sure that it stays on there nicely, like again, the fire line is pretty secure, but I like to go through it twice. Go down through that second row, that middle bead, pull your needle through, then go to the one bead over in that second row, one of the outside beads, pull your needle going up towards the top of the piece and out, and then go through one of the, I guess we'll call them legs, one of the legs of the jump ring and that bead on the top row. So you're going through the bead at the top row, through the leg of the wire guard, pulling your needle and thread up, and then you're going to go back down the opposite leg and the opposite bead at the top and pull your needle through. So now we've gone through the wire guard twice, and it's going to be a little bit more secure here at the top. So now we've done our top half of the pendant. And what we do next is we are going to knot off this part of the thread. So you should still have this whole long piece left because we start at the very center of the thread and we haven't used it. We've only been using one side of it. Now we're at the top row here. We're going to fish through the piece, focusing on the outside. You can go down 3 or 4 beads with your needle, pull it out, and then in between the beads on those outsides, you're going to look to capture your needle between some of the thread. And we're going to start making a knot. And all you're going to do is you're going to pull your needle through. You're gonna see a little hole. Put your needle through that hole, give it a nice little snug pull, and we've made a knot. You want to do that at least 2 more times, going all the way through to the very end. So again, on the outside where my needles or my thread is coming out, I'm going to go down a few beads. So I've gone down 5, pulling my thread all the way through, going in between the thread of those 2 beads on the outside where my thread's coming out of right now. I've made a little hole. I put my needle in between, give it a nice little tug, made another knot, and I'm going to do it one more time, going back again where the thread's coming out of, just going back down through a few more beads. So I've gone through 4 now, pulling my thread through, going between the thread, between those 2 beads where my thread is coming out of right now. I now have a little hole. I'm going to stick my needle in between, give it a nice little tug. Then I'm going to take my needle and go through the last few of those beads until I'm at the very end. So here we are at the end of this piece, back where we started, pulling my needle all the way through. I'm going to take my needle off, and this piece of thread that we just finished using, give a nice little tug. You're going to use your wire cutter, the pink one, and you're going to cut off just that one piece of thread. Don't touch the other one. That's super important because you still need that piece. Just cut off that one piece of thread like so. You're going to see I still have a little bit of thread here showing. So if you saw the email, you would see that I said having a lighter could be useful here. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to singe the end, just so it melts enough where I can't see it anymore. If you don't have a lighter, just try to cut as close to the bead as possible without touching the bead, because you might accidentally bust it. And just like that. So now you can't even see the end anymore. It's gone, it disappeared. So your piece should look like this. So this is the top half. I have on the wire guard and a jump ring, and this jump ring is where my chain's gonna go through once the necklace is done. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the bottom half. So we're essentially repeating all those brick stitch steps. We don't have to do that peyote anymore because we already have a starting base. We're just gonna be doing adding 2 beads on, and then doing 1 bead at a time until we get to the end of the row. When we start another row, adding 2 beads on, and then 1 bead at a time, all the way to the very end. And then we're going to finish it off just how we finish this top part off, by fishing it through, making a few knots as we go, and then singeing off the thread at the end when we're done with it and cutting it off. So here we are. What you can do, because we made a stopper bead, you can leave it if it doesn't bother you, but you might notice you see a little bit of the white thread sticking out on the side. It's not a big deal. If you don't like the way it looks, all you have to do is tug out that thread, because the piece is already together. You don't have to have that thread sticking there anymore for the stopper bead, because we're just going to use the thread to go through the whole thing. So I'm just going to undo that one little part because it does bug me. And then you're going to thread the needle, and we'll get started doing the other side. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going back to that first color we were using. You're doing 4, then 4 of that second color, and then here this is going to be finishing off our diamond for that middle color. We'll be using 1, and then you're going to mirror on the other side. And then when we get to the next row after that, we won't be using this middle color anymore. We'll just be focusing on these 2 colors here on the end as they go downwards. So you're going to pick up 2 of that first color we had. So for me, again, is that marigold. Oh, actually, no, take those off. Sorry. We have to get to here first. So you're going to see we're actually on the second row. To get here at this base part, you're going to go 1 bead over, put your needle through, and it's going to come out of the 3rd bead on the very top here. You're going to pull your thread through with your needle, and now you can see we're 3 beads over. You're just going to go down through the bead next to it, just the bead next to it, pulling it through. And then now we're 2 beads over, and then we're gonna go up through that end bead. And that'll bring us to the very start of where we need to be. So now we're here, we can add on the 2 beads. So you'll pick your 2 beads up. You'll look 2 beads over at the top, go in between that second and third bead where that stitch is, pull your needle all the way through. Go through both beads starting towards the inside, working your way outside. Pull it all the way through. And then go through just that one bead in the center. And then pull it all the way through. And it should make it sit nice and flat, like so. And now you're gonna do that one bead at a time. So again, you pick up one bead, go to the next stitch over in between the 2 beads, pull your needle all the way through, go through the bottom of that new bead we just added on, pull it through, and it should be sitting nice and flat on top. So you're gonna repeat this all the way through to the end, and then we'll get started on the next row. So don't forget, once you get to the center of this row here, you're only gonna need one of those third color beads, and then you're gonna mirror the rest of it, because again, this should look like a diamond. So we're completing this first diamond here. I think for anyone who's like who gets into like selling their craft or any of their own pieces that they make, whatever medium you use, some of the most helpful advice I find usually comes from other vendors, either other businesses too online or people in person. So some of the best advice I've ever gotten was like when I first started and I was selling like my classic size studs that I have on my Instagram that you can see, just look up Little Shiny Wolf, or my website if I ever have them available. I was severely underpricing myself, especially for the amount of time it took me to make them. And I just didn't feel like if I priced them more, that they would sell. And I didn't know if people even like want them. And then there was one beater who I really look up to, and I've met her in person. Um, she bought a couple pairs and she messaged me when she got them in the mail, and she like lives in Alberta, and she told me, she's like, I just got your earrings. I love them. I think they're amazing. The one thing that me and another beater are discussing is you're underpricing yourself. And she even told me like a price point that she thinks like she would be, well, she said a price point she would be willing to pay for them, which was like double what I was selling them for. And I was like shocked. And at first I was like, I don't know, because no one's going to want to buy them at that price. And also I just, I didn't have that like confidence in doing it. So it took me like 3 years to raise my price to that price point. But in the process of doing so is when I started discovering and playing around with other materials when I'm beading too. That helps me also like feel comfortable pricing the things the way I price them, because the materials are an investment. Um, so that was one really helpful piece of advice. Another one that I got was like at in the market one time when I was vending, the way I had my table set up. Like I love something to look really cute and pretty. I love a good setup. I appreciate a nice table layout. I love when people package things certain ways and like how they market themselves. And one vendor had told me as she was walking by, she's like, lots of compliments. She said, the only thing I would change is your tablecloth. It's too busy. And I was like, okay. And like, listen, at first, I'm like trying I love my tablecloth. But I just like let the feedback like sink in. And then it was a 2-day market. So the next day I tried it the way she suggested it. And I actually really liked it. Like, because I did use my tablecloth, but I used it in a different way, folded it where it didn't take up as much space. and then I had a second, like, plain black tablecloth underneath, and I feel like it did definitely, like, enhance the presentation where it wasn't as busy and taking too much attention away from what I was making and selling. So, that was another really good piece of advice. Another one is, when I get asked a lot how to price things, and what I have told other, like, especially beginner beaters is, ask them to take into consideration all those, like, little things, like, how do you source your materials? How much do you pay for your materials? How much time do you put into shopping for materials? How long does it take you to, like, order and customize your, like, packaging and business cards and all that stuff? Um, how much time, like, does it take you to, like, actually beat a piece? How much time does it take you to do, like, if you're selling online, like, the photography for it, and, like, the time it takes for all that admin work and packaging things once they are purchased and then dropping them off at the mail office? How much time does it take you to, like, spend vending in person, filling out applications, paying vendor fees, sitting at your table all day, the amount of emotional and mental energy and physical energy it takes to do all that work? Like, you have to take everything into consideration, not just the beaded piece itself, not just like, because there's so much time that goes into beading and selling beadwork or any other craft than it is just like sitting down and beading something. It's like there's a lot of hidden hours that people don't, I think, realize are included. And then I'll tell people that I won't tell you how to price your work. I could tell you for similar items that I've seen, what people price them for, what I'd be willing to maybe pay for, like a price range or whatever. But I won't tell you how to price. I will definitely tell you if I think you're underpricing your work. And I've said that to friends too. Like, I sat at a market last winter with a friend who's a very talented beater. Like, she's amazing. And she had to step away from the table, and I had to watch her step for a moment. I asked her, "Oh, well, what's your prices for your stuff? So I know in case someone comes by." And she's like telling me. And I like just looked at her. I'm like, "You're underselling yourself." I'm like, "You could charge more for those because like those are definitely worth more than what you're selling." She's like, "Oh, I don't know." And she's like, "Okay." She's like, "How about you try it? I'm gonna step away. If it works and someone buys it for that price, then okay, then I'll change the price." And I was like, "Okay, good." So she stepped away and someone else came and a customer liked them. And I told her the price that I thought she should sell them for because they were definitely worth more than what she was asking for. And the person, no hesitation, bought them. And I told her, I'm like, "See, I'm like, they bought them. You're underpricing your stuff. You're so talented." And like the time and material, like what she had used were sand dollars in her earrings. But she had like gone on a trip, went into the water, found these sand dollars, cleaned them off, and used them herself. So it's not like she just beaded some pieces. Like, there's so much energy and time that goes into a piece. Like, she went out and harvested some of her own materials. Like, I have some quills from when I was back home, I think a couple of years ago. My partner and I went out looking for porcupines and wanted to do it in a very ethical way. And some people are like, "How do you ethically harvest quills?" And there's like a couple ways. There's either you look for those who have unfortunately passed by an accident. So a lot of porcupines might be close to the highway and one might get unfortunately hit. And then people will find it and then they can harvest the quills that way. And it takes a long time to harvest. Another way is, and my partner said, is you could take like a sock, like a long tube sock, and smack its butt. Um and it'll usually like release its quills onto it. So that's kind of like what we did. There was a porcupine uh a porcupine hanging out by one of my auntie's houses, and it had been there for the last few days. So we're like, okay, let's go see if he's there. And we went out to go look, and he was. And with the long stick and the sock uh taped, I think, to the stick, we had to go follow this porcupine and like kind of smack it gently on the butt a few times for it to release its quills. And it did. And I was able to get like a few dozen quills out of it, like really good sized ones too. And I haven't used them yet to this day because I'm like, that was a process. It was really cool too. But one day I'll use those quills on something special and it'll be a nice piece, like something that I don't know. I'll have to wait and see when the time comes. I have them separate somewhere else. But yeah, there's a lot of time and energy that goes into pieces sometimes. Like, people might go out and harvest their own birch bark, or they might go out and harvest their own sweetgrass and braid it into like small little braids and then use it in their earrings, you know? Like there's a lot of time that goes into someone being able to price their own work. And I think only a person can really determine how they want to set their price. Whether someone will buy it or not or see the same value is different, but you should never sell yourself short. You are so good at beading. How long have you been doing this? Oh, thank you. I've been beading now for like 7, almost 8 years. I started doing flat stitch back in 2017. I thought it was 2017. Actually, I did it a few times. So I actually did in 2016. So this is my 8th year now of beading. Um, and at first, the thing I learned, especially doing flat stitch, was, oh my gosh, that takes so long. And the amount of detail and like for someone to like be able to like curve their work and make it sit really flat and details and everything, like wow, it's like I love seeing flat stitch pieces. I think they are absolutely stunning, especially when someone is so good at their work, like whether they're doing a single needle or double needle technique. um but I love personally myself doing brick stitch. I think it's really relaxing and fun. Some people might not say the same thing and vice versa. Some people might be like they really love like a good flat stitch, also known as applique. And if you want to know what a flat stitch is, hold on, I'm just looking for a pair of earrings I could grab right now. Oh, here. So what we're doing right now is called a brick stitch. We're just stacking the beads. There's no pellin or foundation or anything on them to kind of keep them together. They're kept together just by the way they're woven together. This is a flat stitch. So they are done on, it looks like a piece of pellin here. I could see because I could see the white material and backed with hide. These are by the Sinaway sisters. Um, I could see these beads on the outside are delica beads. They use seed beads. And then on the outside part where it's edged, they use let's see, they use seed beads as well. And then they're just, yeah, backed with the hide. So flat stitches like you're beading on something, and then a brick stitch like this is like there's nothing that you're beading on, you're just weaving the materials, your thread together to make them stick together. All right, so depending on if you're a beginner or if you are advanced, if you're advanced, you might almost be done or you might be done already. If you're a beginner, hopefully you're on the bottom part already, and if not, again, just rewatch the recording later on. But we're going to try to wrap up in the next 25 minutes. The goal is by 4:30. So I'm going to get to the end of this row here and I'll walk you through the steps of starting off our row one more time. And don't forget, because now we're going and doing the bottom part, as we go, this middle part has gotten smaller. So it's gotten smaller to the point where we have completed this middle color here, and it's a full diamond. Now the second row of color is starting to shrink, and at some point it will only be this end color finishing it off. You were mailed out or emailed out a template yesterday, PDF of the template we're using, just to help you follow along. So one thing I really want to get into learning next is I want to incorporate form line into my pieces, or try to like incorporate more beaded pieces that have form line in it in some capacity. So what form line is an art style that's found primarily on the West Coast. So like this is an example of form line. This is done by Copper Woman Canoe. These are a wolf, which is my tribe, Lucky Woo. So I want to kind of learn more how to like the history of form line, and I'm trying to find my own technique and style. It doesn't look the same for every nation. It actually will vary nation to nation how they do it. So for some, like for instance, like Haida tend to have like bigger eyes. Um, so if you like look at say like a piece that's like carved like whether it be like wood carved, like a totem pole or a box, or painted, and if it was like kwak versus something that's more like a northern style that could be like say Niskat, which there are quite a few pieces of, you'll see how the ovoids and everything are done a little bit differently. Like they're not going to be the same. And people who are like masters at carving or drawing or understanding the art form can usually differentiate between nations and regions for where the piece may have come from. Artists nowadays will use like a certain books that are out there of like history of like carved work or paintings from like master carvers and study different pieces of work from different master carvers or painters from different regions and kind of practice those, and it helps them kind of like create their own style and technique that makes it a little bit different and more unique to themselves. So in our family we have a well-known we have well-known carvers as well, like master carvers or master like painters or farmland artists. If you're here in Toronto, for instance, there is a museum called the Royal Ontario Museum, the ROM. And at the ROM, you'll see two totem poles. One is a Haida totem pole and one is a Nisgat. And Nisgat is where the nation I'm from. And I believe the totem pole there is actually from Ginglich, which is the village I'm from. Um, and beside it, there is a little like TV that has a pre-recording of Chester Moore, who talks about the piece in detail. And that's actually one of our relatives. And they are a really good painter, um, and artist. They're quite old now, but they're still creating pieces. Um, we have another relative named Norman Tate, if you look him up, and his children are actually quite talented as well. And he has totem poles around the world. Like there's actually one, I think, at the Field Museum in Chicago, which is really cool. And his daughter is like a really talented like form line artist as well. So that's the kind of thing I want to get into next, is like finding a way to like incorporate form line into my beadwork. So I tried it once a few years ago, and actually I think I have the piece here. I made this one side to an earring, but I think I still want to figure out how to like change it up a little bit more. So this is what I did. It's supposed to look like a Lucky Boo. It was a little harder to try with like the Delica. I think maybe I can try to like, I think I like it. I'm not sure. I have to try it again and try to figure out if I like it or not. But I want to learn more about like the history of the artwork, as well as like practicing drawing and painting, and hopefully eventually using it in beading as well. I think it's really cool when people are able to incorporate little bits of themselves in their artwork and like make it really specific to like where they're from and their nations or communities or experiences on the land. I think it's really important also to like know or recognize at least other art styles and art forms. Like there's like different types of like woodland style that you would find more out here on the East Coast versus like more like geometric shapes and styles that you would find more in like the prairies. And they kind of like vary by the different nations and regions. And it kind of helps you to like figure out where things and pieces come from. Um, it also helps with like respecting other nations too, and to like try to avoid appropriation, because like even though we're as an indigenous artist, it doesn't mean that you can't appropriate and that you're immune from appropriation. Like you could still appropriate another nation's style or art that doesn't belong to your community. But there's also a difference between appropriation and appreciation, but I think it's a fine line, and it depends really on like the piece you're making and the style. So like for instance, like Métis work, I didn't know much about like the the origins of like Métis floral work and artwork and stuff. And then I had a friend who actually told me about it and like the history and like what it represents. And it's actually like really cool that like like it's not just like flowery floral work that looks really pretty. It actually like locates a person to like the region they're from. Specific flowers are only found in certain areas, or they represent certain families, and like the way like you're presented certain pieces comes with certain milestones in your life. And I was just like, well, that's really cool. It's like a lot more meaning than what I had expected. I just was like, oh wow, this is really pretty floral artwork. But just like most indigenous pieces or art, it's like there's like a history or reason why it exists. Especially with our nations being very like oral history focused. Like sometimes some of the artwork pieces that we have are things that help tell the stories that are passed down. Okay, so let me explain how to do a row of brick stitch again for anyone who may have forgotten. But again, this is going to be it's recorded, so you can always come back and watch it if you need to. So when you get to the very beginning of a row when you're doing a brick stitch, you're going to pick up 2 beads of the color you need. So here I need 2 of the marigold. You're going to look at the bottom of the piece and you're going to count 2 beads over and then go in between the thread of where that second and third bead are. Pull your needle through. You're going to take your needle and go between or go through those 2 beads you just put on and then pull your needle through. You're going to take your needle and go through just the 1 bead closest to the center and pull it through and give it a nice little snug tug. And then you're going to see that they sit nice and flat on top. And now we go back to doing that 1 bead across all the way until we get to the next row, and then we repeat with the 2 beads again. So here I know I need 2 more marigold. Here I have on this last row 4 of that burnt orange. So now I know I'm going to need 3, and then I'll need 4 more marigold. So I'll pick up 1 bead of the color you need. You're gonna go in between those next 2 beads, between that thread with your needle, pull it all the way through, go to the bottom of that new bead you just put on to help secure it and keep it to sit flat on top. And then you're gonna repeat that process all the way across. So it is 4:15 now. So we've been on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. We'll be done in about 15 minutes or so. Again, don't worry or stress if you're not done or close to being done. You can follow along with this later. Or if you've got the hang of it, you can just, once this is finished, turn on a TV show or play some music and just kind of relax and keep going. And you'll probably have like done, like you could definitely get it done today if you have the time and you're not busy. This should be seen as like self-care, a way for you to take time for yourself, to maybe unwind. If this is your first time beading, again, it might not look perfect, and that's okay. It's a starting point. Like there's only room for improvement with practice. If you're an experienced beater, hopefully this was just relaxing. Hopefully you got some like helpful like tips or tricks, like at least with like a resource shopping for like supplies or about pricing, or maybe you're just learning how to brick stitch. I know for some people um they may have that teaching where you make something for the first time that you gift it away. And if you do, I hope whoever you gift it to appreciates the time and energy put into wanting to learn this and this gift you've made for them. You can try to explain the materials as best as you can. Again, all the findings are sterling silver and they're great if you have sensitive skin. Because it's sterling silver, it could tarnish and will need some polishing over time, especially depending on what you're wearing on your skin. Can you explain turning on the brick rows? I find the edge seems bumpy. I'm new and learned during COVID. No problem. So when we're getting to the beginning of a row of a brick stitch, you're going to pick up the 2 beads. It's always at the beginning. After that, you only need 1. Let's see, make sure there. Okay. So I have my 2 beads. You're going to like look at this top part, not this part here. You're going to flip it over and look at it here, where the thread is coming out of. You're going to make sure you count 2 beads over. So 1, 2, and you're going to go in between the thread between that second and third bead here with those 2 beads attached in your needle. You're going to push your needle all the way through, and you're going to have your 2 beads sitting like this. Going from the inside part towards the outside part, you're going to put your needle in between those 2 beads you just put on, or I mean through, not between, but through both of those beads, like so. You're going to pull your needle all the way through, and then you're going to go back through just 1 bead, just the 1 bead that's closer to the center, not both. You're going to take your needle, go in that 1 bead. You're going to pull your needle all the way through. You might have to give it a little tug or a wiggle, but it should help your beads sit flat. And now once you've done those 2 first beads of a brick stitch, you're going to do 1 bead at a time all the way through. And then when we get to the next row, it's when we do 2 beads again. So where I'm at right now is I just finished the last piece for my middle color here. So that's wrapped up now. So every row moving forward, I'm only going to be using this marigold color going right down. And I'm going to finish at the 2 bead mark. When I get to 2 beads in that last row is when I know I'm done. You could do all the way to 1 bead if you'd like, but it's all preference. I just like the way it looks better with the 2 beads on the end. If you have friends that are beaders or crafters or whatever it is that you're trying to get into, it's always nice to also do like little like crafting circles. So like sometimes I'll get together with some of my friends and we'll do a beading session. We call it a, like explicit language, but like a bead and bitch. And we just kind of sit together and we might bead and work on projects that we might have been putting off for a while, or maybe we haven't been feeling inspired. So sometimes it's nice to get together with other people. Especially if like they're newer or they're more experienced, you can like share different things from your own experiences with it. It's also a nice time to like be able to connect and socialize in a different capacity. Even like sometimes seeing like different supplies you might not have in your collection and you can ask questions about it or try something out. Or maybe a new color that you don't have, beads, a certain bead that you use that you know they might use. Sometimes you might find materials you want to share with your friends, and that'll be the time to bring it out. So as we're gearing down to wind off the Zoom session a bit here, just a reminder, one more time, this is recorded. So if you are feeling like you need steps repeated, um, you'll be able to watch this video later on and slow it down, pause, and rewind as you go. Another one is this time of the year can be very heavy for a lot of people, especially within the Indigenous community. um, especially with a lot of the messaging around truth and reconciliation or remembrance and honoring of residential schools and survivors. So just make sure you're taking time for some self-care for yourself, whether that be going for a walk, take a bubble bath. If for you, self-care looks like tuning out and having a little alone time, have some alone time, going for a drive. If it's, if you're a social butterfly and it's spending time with people around you that you love who understand the experience, um, who also are looking to just like be able to like relax and unwind, like do so just because I find like I don't know, maybe I don't think it's just, people who are in urban settings. I think it's all indigenous people at times, like it can be a lot of emotional and like mental labor put on us, especially having to like share experiences or stories or explain the messaging behind it and what it means, or just like for survivors or intergenerational survivors, seeing a lot of the messaging or stories and experiences being shared, like it can be very triggering at times. It's really important, but it just means like it's just equally as important to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And how are you going to take care of anyone else if you are not taken care of? All right, so I'm getting close to my last row. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to tie it off like we did that first half. We'll singe it once we cut it, and then we'll put on the chain, and that is it, and it is good to go. If you want to follow my journey and you don't already, definitely follow me on Instagram at Little Shiny Wolf. Same on Facebook, Little Shiny Wolf. I try to post often of either if I'm doing drops or have new pieces. Sometimes of my personal life, like my pregnancy journey, or if I've like seen family or something like that. And sometimes I do like resource sharing as well, like there's events coming up, or like I don't treat it just as a professional page. I probably should, but I don't feel like that's very true to who I am and like how it is being in like our communities. Like it's not meant to be like, I don't know, for me it's not all business. Like I like to share. We can share our pieces on IG. Yeah, definitely share your piece on like your social media if you have it. You could tag me. I'd love to see how it turns out. Um, and I might even ask if I can like reshare it in my stuff too, because it'd be kind of cool to see how people's work turns out. Okay, so I am done the beading. I am at those last two beads. So again, how we finish this off is the opposite bead where the thread has come out of. I'm going to go up through it. And then you're just going to start bringing your thread through the beads. And ideally, you want to end off here somewhere. So you're going to take your needle and go through the beads. You're going to make a knot, go through some beads, make a knot, go through some beads, maybe make another knot, get to the end. You want to pull it out. You're going to cut it, and you're going to use a lighter to singe it. So that's just going to be to melt it. So as I'm going through, I'm trying to be careful because you don't want to accidentally bust a bead. Because if you bust a bead when you do this kind of a style, if you can't really fix it, I'm sure maybe like there's ways you can add a bead in, but you're going to see the thread. And if you're someone like me where that's going to bother you, like I would just probably cut up this whole piece and start all over. Like I wouldn't be able to because I would know it's there. So if it feels hard to pull through, you might need to look for a different pathway in your beads to pull your needle and thread through. But another thing you can do is as you're going through your beads, and if it feels like there's enough room, you just can't get your needle to do it with your fingers, you could take a pair of pliers, grab the needle, and then just bring it through gently. If you feel resistance, that's kind of when you want to make sure you stop because you might bust a bead. And what that means is the bead is going to break. These are glass, so they are very delicate. And again, it happens. It totally happens. And when it does, it can be very frustrating, especially if you put a lot of time into a piece. So I'm probably gonna make one more knot somewhere just to make sure it's nice and secure, that nothing's gonna come undone. I'm gonna go through my last few beads here to get me out on the side here. All right, my needle is off. I'm just playing around my piece a little bit just to kind of help things sit nicely. So I'm gonna give this thread just a little tug and again, kind of just like wiggle it out a little bit, the piece. All right, with the thread cutter, again, you don't have to use a thread cutter, but that pink plier you were sent has a thread cutter with it too. If you use scissors, because this is fireline, it's fishing thread, it can dull your scissors. So if you do it over and over again, eventually the scissors are going to be not in the greatest shape. So it's better to use a wire cutter if you're using fireline. So now you can see I have a little bit of thread here left still. So I'm going to use my lighter and I am just going to melt it so that you can't see it anymore. So that's what the piece looks like when it's done. It's like a chevron. And then this is when you take your chain. So everyone will have received either 16 or 18-inch sterling silver chain. Like so. This one here is a 16-inch. I didn't have to look at the thing. I could just tell right away just by looking at it. You're going to undo it, and then you're just going to thread through the smaller part through that jump ring, which is that circle part attached to that necklace. Because I have nails, it's a little trickier. Okay, there we go. So this is why I said it's important to like look at the size of your jump rings when you're ordering them. These here are 5 millimeters. I accidentally ordered 4 millimeters ones, and like this was like impossible to get through. It would have been way too tight. But a 5 millimeter for this was perfect for me. So sometimes it's nice to see your sizing in person, but just in case you're going to be someone who orders online, this is a 5 millimeter that you have with you, and it's a really good shape. Or shape, it's a good size. And then I'm just going to close off this necklace so the pendant stays on. I'm struggling. These nails are like, I don't usually have my nails this long. And these are my actual nails too, so I probably need to cut these soon. These beasts. Okay. So that is the necklace. So that's what you should have when you're all done. If you forgot to put on this jump ring, so the jump ring is nice because like if you see how the wire guard is, it's going to, when you wear it, be flat against you. But when you put the chain on, if you don't have a jump ring with it, then the necklace kind of sits at the side then because of just where how it is. And you don't want it to be like that. You want it to be able to sit flat. So if you forgot to put on your jump ring and you have a soldered one, which means it is it can't come apart. So soldered means there's like you might see the line in the jump ring, but soldered was used on it to seal it. You have an alternative way you can put on the chain if the wire guard is big enough. So again, this U-shaped piece is a wire guard. I'm just going to take off this chain if I can. There we go. So if I didn't put a jump ring on it, alternatively, what you could do if you can make it fit is you would just put your chain in half, fish it through that wire guard. So that sits like this. and then you're going to, the two ends where your necklace would connect, you're going to put it through this like little hole we just created. And then your necklace is going to sit like with like a knot in it, but it helps it to stay flat against your skin. The only thing is like it's not as movable as it would be with like a jump ring on it. A jump ring is definitely going to be the easier thing to make sure that you have on your piece. Uh, Alternatively, if you forgot to put the jump ring on and it is, say, a soldered one where you can't open it up, you could just, if you live near a jewelry store, you're able to go to one or order online, or if you have a friend who's in jewelry making, you can ask them if they have a jump ring that you can have that's unsoldered. If you did get one that is unsoldered, which some of them might be, you can tell by using two pliers where the line is in the jump ring. And then you just pull it apart slightly. If it comes apart, that means it wasn't soldered and it's easier to like take apart. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this to focus. So you can see like I'm able to like separate that ring shape so it's no longer a perfect circle, and I could just slip it off and slip it back on. So that is how you do a brick stitch pendant like so. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you were able to learn some stuff here or at least enjoyed the conversation a little bit. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's a really busy weekend for everybody or for a lot of people. Um, and yeah, so definitely share your piece online if you want. Tag me in it, Little Shiny Wolf. If you have questions, you can send me a DM and I'll reply at my convenience and try to answer your question the best I can. Again, the session will be shared with you later on, and you will be able to watch it at your own leisure and follow along at your own pace. And then be sure to just take your time. If you're getting frustrated, just walk away, come back to it when you're ready. It will still be there for you. And I hope you enjoy. So Tuxanine, everybody.